I was 76 the night everything finally came to a head, and if you were sitting across from me right now, you'd still see the way my hands shake when I think about it. 3 months doesn't sound like much on paper, but when you're my age, and when every day is stretched thin with pain, doubt, and someone trying to break you down, it feels like a lifetime. And on that September night in Dayton, Ohio, I stopped being the man they thought they could push around. You ever feel the air shift before a storm? That low rumble in your bones? That's what it felt like on September 18th, 2022, around 9:40 p.m., when I finally decided I wasn't going to let my grandson, Tyler, get away with what he'd done. I'd spent weeks pretending to be weaker than I was, moving slow, speaking soft, letting him think I didn't hear things I damn well heard. But that night, sitting in my old La Z-Boy with the street lamp bleeding yellow light through the blinds, I knew exactly what I had to do. "You all right, Grandpa?" Tyler had said that morning, patting my shoulder in that fake, practiced way. "I'll take care of the bills again. Don't worry about anything." The way he said it made my stomach twist. I'd heard that tone before, when he was 15 and got caught stealing tools from my garage. Same syrupy voice, same rehearsed innocence. Back then, I'd grounded him for a summer. Now he was stealing from me again. Just a hell of a lot more than a box of Craftsman wrenches. You're probably wondering how a young man ends up draining his grandfather's checking account, piece by piece, and still has the nerve to smile while pouring him a cup of decaf like nothing happened. Well, it didn't start with the money. It started when my knees gave out in June. It started when I needed help getting groceries. It started when the doctor suggested I shouldn't be driving anymore. That's when Tyler showed up, bright smile, clean haircut, talking about how family takes care of family. And for a while, I wanted to believe it. But somewhere in late July, I knew something was wrong. I'd hear him muttering on the phone in the kitchen. "He'll never notice," he'd whisper. "He trusts me. I'm the only one he's got." And every time I asked a question, any question, he'd pat my hand like you pat the back of a dog who's whining. "Don't stress yourself, Grandpa. You just focus on resting." Resting? That word turned bitter in my mouth. By September, the bitterness had hardened into something else. I had one thing left that he didn't know about, a habit from my old construction days back when I ran crews for Montgomery Building Supply. I kept duplicates of everything, every receipt, every statement, every damn thing. And on September 10th, when my Medicare summary came with a bank alert tucked behind it, I finally saw the numbers. I won't get into the whole list right now, not yet, but there were withdrawals I never made, charges from places I hadn't stepped foot in, and transfers that made my heart pound so hard I had to sit down on the edge of the bed to catch my breath. 3 months, dozens of transactions, enough to put a dent in anyone's savings, let alone a man living off Social Security and the last of his union pension. When Thursday rolled around, I did what he least expected. I asked him to stay the night, told him I felt unsafe, alone, told him I needed him close by. You should have seen the satisfaction on his face, like a wolf who thinks the sheep finally limped. But I wasn't limping. Not anymore. Around 9:40 that night, while he sat in the living room scrolling through his phone like he owned the place, I pressed my palm against the cold edge of the kitchen counter and took one slow, steady breath. I knew exactly what was about to happen, what I was about to set in motion. And I'll tell you something only once. There's a moment in a man's life, no matter his age, when fear burns away and leaves nothing but clarity. That was my moment. I walked back into the living room, the floorboards creaking the way they always did, but this time they sounded different, sharper, heavier, like they were underlining every step I took. Tyler didn't look up. "Grandpa, you good?" he asked, lazy and distracted. "I'm just fine," I said, my voice steady in a way it hadn't been in months. He finally glanced at me, eyebrows raised. "What's up?" You ever see the exact second someone realizes their whole game is about to collapse? I watched that recognition flicker across his eyes when I said the next sentence. "I know what you've been doing." He froze. Didn't breathe, didn't blink, just stared at me like the walls were suddenly closing in. And that was when the night of justice truly began. Before I tell you how he answered, before I tell you what I did next, you need to understand something about the life I had before all this. Because folks always imagine these stories start with a broken old man and a greedy kid circling like a vulture. But that's not where mine began. Mine started in a place a lot simpler, back when the world still felt like it had solid ground under my boots. I spent 38 years with Montgomery Building Supply, running crews from Dayton down through Kettering and Beaver Creek. Hard work, good work, summer days so hot the lumber smelled like baked pine, winters so cold you could feel the frost in your lungs. I started back in '72, right after the tail end of Vietnam. I wasn't drafted, bad knees even back then, but most of the guys I worked with were vets, tough men with short fuses but big hearts. You could trust them. That's something I don't take lightly these days. I met my wife Linda at a 4th of July picnic in '74. She wore this blue sundress and had a laugh that cut through every noise around her. We built a life, small house on Oak Ridge Drive, 2 kids, summers spent grilling in the backyard, winters spent patching up the same leaky spot in the roof that never wanted to stay fixed. Simple, good, real. Tyler wasn't born into any of this mess, not at first. He came along in '99, my daughter's boy. I remember holding him in Miami Valley Hospital, those tiny fingers gripping mine like he'd known me forever. Funny thing, isn't it? How someone you once held like that ends up being the person who shakes the meaning out of your bones. But before all that, before the betrayal, I was the kind of grandfather who showed up. Baseball games, high school shop projects, Christmas mornings that started at 6:15 a.m. sharp because Tyler couldn't wait. I taught him how to sand a 2x4 without tearing out the grain. He taught me how to use whatever new phone I couldn't figure out. Back then, if you asked me who I trusted most in the family, I'd have said him, without hesitation. You know, people talk about aging like a slow fade, but for me it hit all at once. Linda passed in 2018, pancreatic cancer, the kind that doesn't give you time to bargain, and after that the house felt too big. Rooms echoed. The bed creaked in a way that made me feel small. I kept busy as long as I could, but by 2021 the arthritis in my knees took a turn, and I had to quit part-time work at the hardware store. Then came the heart meds. Then the warning from the doctor about my driving. It's humbling, you know, having someone in their 30s tell you you're not safe behind the wheel, but I listened, thought I was doing the responsible thing. That's when the family started talking about me slowing down, about me needing help. Those phrases, they start soft like cotton, but they harden real fast. Tyler stepped up first, or at least that's how it looked. "Let me help, Grandpa," he'd said one Sunday in June, standing in the doorway with that earnest expression he used to wear as a kid. "You shouldn't worry about errands and bills. I got you." I swear to God I believed him. He cleaned gutters, drove me to the pharmacy, picked up groceries, stayed for dinner every Thursday. If you'd asked me then, I'd have told you he was a blessing. But looking back, I see the pattern clear as day. He wasn't helping. He was embedding. He was making himself indispensable, because control doesn't show up with a bang, it arrives quietly. A hand on your shoulder, a smile that lasts a bit too long, a suggestion disguised as concern. Then came July. Every time I walked into a room where Tyler was, he'd end whatever phone call he was on a little too quickly. Every conversation ended with, "Don't stress about it, Grandpa. I'll handle it." And I let him. Because when you're tired, when your knees ache, when you're afraid of slipping on your own damn porch steps, that kind of help feels like mercy. But it wasn't mercy, it was leverage. One moment stands out clear as glass. It was July 22nd, a Saturday, humid as deep summer can get in Ohio. Cicadas screaming so loud it felt like they were drilling into the wood of the porch. Tyler was sorting mail at my kitchen table. I walked in, slow but steady, and he slid one envelope, just one, under a newspaper. Not fast enough to hide it from me, but fast enough that he hoped I wouldn't notice. "What was that?" I asked. He didn't even look up. "Just junk, you don't need to bother." Those 6 words stuck in my mind for days. You don't need to bother. Back then I still doubted myself. That's something people don't understand about getting older. You start questioning little things. Did I misplace that? Did I already pay that bill? Did I forget that conversation? It's easy for someone to make you feel small. Easier still when you're scared they might be right. But every now and then, the old version of me, the one who used to run crews, manage payrolls, catch mistakes in lumber orders from a mile away. That man came surging back. And he whispered the same thing every night as I lay awake staring at the ceiling fan turning slow above me. Something ain't right. Still, even with the doubt, even with the unease crawling under my skin, I never imagined Tyler, my grandson, would be capable of what he did next. Because betrayal doesn't arrive like thunder. It arrives like a hairline crack in a window, small, quiet, easy to overlook, until one day, with no warning, the entire pane shatters. The funny thing about the moment everything started to fall apart is that it didn't look dramatic at all. There wasn't lightning, no shouting, just a quiet Tuesday morning in early August, the kind where the air feels warm even inside the house and the sunlight comes through the blinds in thin strips. I was standing at the sink, rinsing out my coffee mug, when the first real crack showed itself. Tyler had stopped by to check on me, like he often did. He walked into the kitchen scrolling his phone and said, "Grandpa, did you approve that online purchase yesterday?" "What purchase?" He froze for half a heartbeat. Not long, but long enough. If you've ever watched someone lie and catch themselves mid-sentence, you know the look. Eyes widen just a bit, jaw tightens, breath gets shallow. And there it was, right on his face. "Oh," he said, trying to recover. "Maybe it was something automatic. Don't worry, I'll look later." I didn't push. I let him think I was tired, distracted. But inside, my gut twisted. I'd spent my entire career catching shortcuts, mistakes, excuses. Men tried to hide things from me all the time. Late deliveries, missing inventory, bad lumber counts. Tyler had that same look I'd seen on foremen who thought they could slip something past me. He left a couple hours later, saying he had a busy afternoon. But something hovered in the room long after he walked out, the sense that the ground had started shifting under my feet. That night, as I was brushing my teeth, I kept thinking about the envelope he'd hidden weeks before. The one he said was junk. I should have looked then. Should have asked him right on the spot. But grief from losing Linda, the doctor's warnings, the damn aches in my shoulders, it had all chipped away at the old confidence I once had. Still, I wasn't gone yet. Around midnight, I shuffled into the living room, turned on the lamp beside the recliner, and opened the bottom drawer of my old oak desk. I kept my important papers there: insurance forms, mortgage payoff statement, union pension letter. I pulled the folder labeled bank and started flipping through the statements. I expected to find nothing. That's the truth. I expected to realize I was worrying over nothing. I wanted to believe I was the one making a mistake. Instead, I felt something cold twist through me. There were withdrawals I didn't recognize. Small ones at first, $1.40 here, $25 there, easy to overlook. Then bigger ones, $200, $350, even $480, all through July. And next to each, these cryptic little notes: assistance, errand, household. Household, I live alone. For a long moment, I just stared at the page, the numbers blurring as my eyes filled. Not tears exactly, more like heat. Anger and fear fused together until it felt like someone had opened a furnace inside my chest. You know what thought hit me hardest? That I might have let it happen. That somewhere along the way, I'd handed him the rope he was tying around my own damn neck. The next morning, I decided to test something. I called Tyler. He answered on the third ring, sounding rushed. "Hey, Grandpa, everything okay?" "I can't find my checkbook," I said. "Did I give it to you?" There was silence, just long enough to confirm the truth. Then, yeah, you did, last week. Remember, you said writing checks hurt your hands, so you wanted me to handle it for you." "I said that," I replied, keeping my tone uncertain. "You don't remember?" he asked, soft pity dripping through the line. That was the first time he tried to make me doubt my own memory. A little nudge, a step one. I let out a shaky laugh on purpose. Guess I must have forgotten. "You're okay," he said with that syrupy confidence. "I'm here, I'll take care of everything, you just relax." But that word again, relax, made my spine stiffen. When someone tells you to relax too much, it's usually because they're doing something they don't want you looking at. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet house, the clock ticking loud enough to hear from across the room, and felt something change inside me. Not panic, not confusion, something sharper, something closer to resolve. 2 days later, I tested him again. I asked, "Did the electric bill come yet?" He smiled too big too quick. "Yep, paid it already." "Oh," I asked, "mind showing me, just so I don't get mixed up?" For a split second, his whole face tightened. "Grandpa, trust me, you don't need to worry about any of that." I leaned back in my chair. "I know I don't, but I want to." He dropped his voice. "Why are you acting suspicious?" That word, suspicious, as if I had no right to my own damn information. "Well," I answered, keeping steady, "a man likes to know what's happening with his home." Instead of hearing me, he stepped closer, putting a hand on my shoulder. "Look," he said, "I know you're getting older. It's normal to get confused, but it's better if I just handle these things." That was the moment, the exact moment, my fear hardened into certainty. He was conditioning me, making me question myself, making me dependent, slowly, quietly shifting the balance of power in his favor. And the awful truth, if I had been just a few years older, or if my mind had slipped even a little, he would have gotten away with it. The first time I confronted him outright was the following Sunday. He was in my kitchen, opening mail like he lived there. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I just walked up and said, "Son, put the letter opener down." He did, but he didn't look at me. "I want my checkbook back," I said. He laughed. "Grandpa, don't do this." "Do what?" "This paranoia." I stared at him. The boy I used to take fishing. The teenager who'd cried in my truck the night he failed his first driving test. The young man who'd asked me for help buying his first used Ford Ranger. Standing in my kitchen, calling me paranoid with the same tone someone uses to scold a child. "I'm not confused," I said. He met my eyes finally, and something dark flickered there. "Grandpa, you're making things harder than they need to be. Just let me help." "I never asked for this kind of help," I said. "Yes, you did." That was when he stepped closer, too close, and spoke low so his voice wouldn't shake. "If you start messing with things, you're going to make trouble for both of us," he said. "Just let it go." Let it go. The phrase slammed into me like a 2x4. Not a request, not concern. A warning. And warnings don't come from someone who's innocent. I didn't answer him, didn't react. I just let the silence sit between us until he grabbed his things and left, muttering under his breath. When the door shut and the house went quiet, I felt the first wave of real fear. Not the kind that makes you shake. No, this was the deep kind. The kind that sits in your spine, heavy and cold. The kind that tells you your world is shifting in ways you can't afford to ignore. But mixed with that fear was something else. A memory. Late summer of 1986, standing on a scaffold 20 feet in the air, looking down at a foreman who'd lied about a safety inspection. I'd felt that same cold certainty then. And just like back then, I knew one thing for sure. A man who lies in small ways will lie in big ones. A man who hides small things will steal larger ones. And a man who thinks you're weak, he will push you until something breaks. On that August night, sitting alone in my recliner with the cicadas buzzing outside and the blinds casting shadows across the carpet, I knew something inside me had shifted for good. I was done doubting myself. Done giving him the benefit of the doubt. Done pretending. I just didn't know yet how bad things would get before they turned around. Or how deep the betrayal would cut. If I'd known what waited for me on August 27th, I might have braced myself. Sat down first. Said a prayer. Something. But life doesn't give warnings the way movies do. Real betrayal hits you in the quiet moments when you're unprepared, unguarded, believing the day will be ordinary. It was a Saturday morning, warm enough that the air coming through the screen door felt like coffee steam on my skin. I just finished frying 2 eggs, over easy the way Linda always made them, when I noticed my mail sitting on the porch, half tucked under the old welcome mat, the one with faded cardinals she picked out at a craft fair years ago. Normally, Tyler grabbed the mail. He did it automatically, like a ritual, but he hadn't come by since our talk. That was the longest he'd stayed away in months. I stepped outside, knee stiff, and bent slowly to pick up the stack. Nothing unusual at first: Medicare flyer, a coupon book, a letter from the county about property taxes. And then I saw it. A thin white envelope from my bank, Columbia Federal. I felt my chest tighten in that old familiar way. The same feeling I used to get when a supplier undercounted a shipment and I had to recheck everything by hand. I walked back inside, sat at the kitchen table, and slid a finger under the flap. It wasn't a statement. It wasn't a fraud alert. It was worse. A notification of account balance update. As of August 25, 2022, 3:14 p.m. Checking balance, $724.18. Available funds, $338.41. I blinked at the paper hard. That couldn't be right. That account was supposed to hold over $12,000. I kept it for property taxes, home repairs, emergencies, the cushion I'd built over decades. I felt my pulse start to thud in my ears, steady as a hammer hitting a beam. I grabbed my phone from the kitchen counter. No hesitation this time. I called the bank. Columbia Federal Customer Support, this is Angela. How can I assist? Ma'am, I said, my voice dry as dust. I need to go over withdrawals on my account. Something's wrong. Of course, sir. I'll just need to verify. I rattled off everything she asked. Address, last deposit, branch location. I opened the account back in 1985. She typed for a moment, keys clacking softly. All right, Mr. Henderson. I'm pulling up your recent transactions right now. I heard a shift in her breathing, just barely, but it was there. Sir, she said slowly, are you aware of the series of transfers made over the past 2 months? What transfers? To an online account under the name T. Henderson. The room felt suddenly smaller, walls creeping in. How much? I asked. Let me check. The first was June 29th for $125. She paused. Then July 3rd, $300. July 8th, $450. July 12th, $500. July 19th, $620. She kept going. And with every number she read, my breath got thinner, like someone was squeezing my ribs. August 2nd, $840. August 9th, $900. August 18th, $1,100. And finally, August 25th, $1,320. I swallowed hard. How much total? Typing quiet, too quiet. Sir, across all transfers, the total is $6,255. I gripped the edge of the table, hard. My fingers ached, knuckles white as chalk. Angela lowered her voice. Mr. Henderson, these were marked as authorized. How? I croaked. I never logged in. I never touched a computer for any of this. Sir, someone changed your online banking password on June 28th. I closed my eyes. June 28th. The same day Tyler helped me with my mail. The same day he'd spent nearly an hour on my computer claiming he was updating my antivirus because it was slow. My stomach turned. Angela continued, we can start a fraud report if you'd like, but first I need to ask, do you recognize the name on the receiving account? T. Henderson, I whispered, my grandson. There was silence on her end, professional silence, the kind bank workers use when they know they've stumbled into something painful. Sir, she said gently, I'm very sorry. Those 4 words cracked something inside me. I hung up slowly, like every movement took effort. The house buzzed with quiet, refrigerator humming, clock ticking, a lawn mower droning faintly down the street. Everyday sounds, familiar sounds, but the world didn't feel familiar anymore. I don't know how long I sat there. 10 minutes, maybe 30. Long enough for the eggs on my plate to turn cold. Long enough for my hands to stop trembling and start burning instead. But the shattering moment wasn't the bank call, not the real one. That came 2 hours later. I was sitting in my recliner, bank papers scattered across my lap, when my phone buzzed with a text. From Tyler. Hey Grandpa, coming by later, wanna check in. No apology, No concern, no hint that he knew I'd discovered anything. And then, like some twist of cruel fate, another text came in right after, but this one wasn't for me. It was clearly meant for someone else. Yeah, he still trusts me. Probably let me handle his pension next. Dude has no idea. I stared at the screen. I read it once, twice, a third time. The words felt like gravel in my throat. Let me handle his pension next. He was planning to take more, much more. That was the moment something inside me snapped, not like a brittle twig, but like a beam that had been bearing too much weight for too long. The kind of snap that changes the structure of a house forever. There's a special kind of pain that comes when someone you love not only betrays you, but thinks you're too weak, too old, too confused to ever fight back. It's a humiliation that sticks to your bones. I sat there in the quiet, phone glowing in my hand, and a memory surfaced, one I hadn't thought about in years. Back in '94, my old foreman Earl had pulled me aside when a subcontractor tried to cheat us out of steel beams we'd already paid for. I was angry, ready to start swinging, but Earl put a hand on my shoulder and said, "Don't let the anger drive you. Let the truth drive you. Anger burns out fast. Truth keeps walking." That memory slid into place like a puzzle piece. I wasn't going to lash out. I wasn't going to crumble. I wasn't going to let my grandson rewrite me into the weak old man he needed me to be. I was going to collect the truth. Every penny, every lie, every piece of evidence. But first I needed to see him, needed to hear his voice, needed to look him in the eye and know, really know, that the boy I once held in a hospital room was gone. When he showed up that evening, all smiles, all casual charm, I stood in the doorway and watched him approach. The porch light flickered above him, moths dancing in the glow. "Hey, Grandpa," he said, stepping inside like he owned the place. "Everything okay?" For a moment I almost said his name, almost called him kiddo like I used to, almost asked him why he did it. But I didn't. Instead, I looked him dead in the eye and said, "We need to talk." He froze, just for a heartbeat. But it was enough. He knew. Not how much I knew, not what I'd seen, but he knew something was different, that the ground was shifting under his feet now. And for the first time in 3 months, I saw fear flicker in his eyes. He said, "Why, what's going on?" I didn't answer. Not yet. Because the truth was no longer the only thing I needed. I needed a plan. I needed proof. I needed justice. And I needed one night, the right night to take everything back. If you've ever had the ground drop out from under you, really drop, you know the fall doesn't happen all at once. It's slow at first, almost gentle. A doubt, a tremor, a moment where you tell yourself, maybe I'm imagining this. But once you hit that tipping point, there's no climbing back. Gravity does what it does. And the days after learning what Tyler had done, those were the longest, quietest fall I ever lived through. He left the house that evening acting like nothing was wrong. He chatted about the Bengals preseason game, asked if I needed milk, even made some joke about how I should let him handle things, so I didn't stress myself to death. I stood there and nodded, saying as little as possible because my mind wasn't in the room with him anymore. I was somewhere deeper, somewhere darker, sifting through every moment of the last 3 months and seeing them with a clarity that hurt worse than any arthritis I've ever had. When the door closed behind him, the silence was so thick it felt like someone had draped a blanket over the whole house. I sat down in my recliner, bank papers still on the end table, and stared at them until the numbers blurred into white shapes. 12,000 gone. 6,000 I could prove. The rest stolen in little sips like a thief draining a whiskey bottle in the dark. The worst part wasn't the money. I keep telling you that, but it's the truth. The money hurt, sure, but it was something else, something raw and humiliating. He didn't just steal cash. He stole the belief that I was safe in my own home. He stole the trust I'd spent years building. He stole the version of me he thought wouldn't fight back. And in the weeks that followed, he tried to break that last part too. The next morning I woke up stiff and tired, like my bones had aged a decade overnight. I shuffled into the kitchen, reached for the coffee pot, and saw the empty jug of creamer on the counter. Tyler forgot to replace it. Normally, that wouldn't matter, but that morning it did. It was another reminder that he'd wedged himself into parts of my life I'd once handled just fine. I poured my coffee black and sat down, listening to the hum of the fridge and the faint traffic outside. My head felt heavy, full of thoughts that kept circling the same question. How far was Tyler willing to go? By noon, he texted me. "Want lunch? I can pick something up." I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. "No, I'm all right." He sent back a thumbs-up emoji. A damn emoji. The next few days blurred together in a haze of quiet dread. I didn't call the bank again, didn't tell my daughter, didn't contact the police, because something in me, something old and wounded, kept whispering that maybe, just maybe, I had misunderstood. Maybe he had some explanation. Maybe I'd let grief and age twist things. Doubt is a powerful thing, especially when you're alone. On August 30th, he showed up uninvited, just walked right in like it was his house. "Hey, Grandpa," he said, tossing his keys on the counter. "I'm gonna grab your bills, make sure everything's paid." I didn't speak. He moved around with this breezy confidence, humming to himself, flipping through mail, tapping on his phone. I watched him from the recliner, my chest tightening with every envelope he touched. He didn't even ask permission. He stopped pretending that part. "Here," he said after a few minutes, holding out a piece of mail. "This one's for your car insurance." I took it. The envelope was already opened. "Did you open this?" I asked. He shrugged. "Yeah, I figured it was easier for you." Easier for me. Those words had become needles under my skin. "You shouldn't be going through my mail," I said quietly. He blinked like he hadn't expected resistance. "I'm helping." "I didn't ask you to." He leaned against the counter. "Grandpa, I know this is confusing for you. Let me take care of this stuff." Confusing. Something snapped, not in a loud way, not anger, not shouting, more like a faint crack deep in the foundation. "Tyler," I said, "you need to leave for today." His eyes narrowed, just a flicker, a flash of something mean. "Why?" "Because I said so." He stared at me, and for the first time in my life I saw a look in him I had never seen before, not even when he was a mouthy teenager. Something cold, calculating, like he was weighing his options. "Fine," he finally said, "but we'll talk tomorrow. You're not thinking straight." He left, and for hours afterward, I sat in the silent house feeling something I hadn't felt since Linda died. A heavy, crushing loneliness. That night I barely slept. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the creaks in the house, the distant hum of passing cars, the drip from the bathroom faucet that I kept meaning to fix. Every sound felt magnified, like the world had turned up its volume while I shrank into myself. Around 3 a.m., I got up and walked to the kitchen. The light above the stove cast a dim glow, blue and cold. I set my hands on the counter and felt how thin the skin on them had gotten, lined, spotted, fragile. The same hands that once lifted 100-pound beams now shook when I held a coffee cup. The truth hit me hard right then. Tyler counted on that fragility. He needed me to feel weak. He needed me to think I couldn't stand up to him. The next day, things got worse. He showed up again, this time with a folder. "Got everything organized," he said cheerfully, placing it on the coffee table. "Bills, bank stuff, passwords." "Passwords?" I asked. "For your accounts," he replied. "I updated everything." The room seemed to tilt. "You changed my passwords." "Yeah," he said, completely unfazed. "I told you your old ones weren't safe. Now everything's secure." "Secure from who?" "From you." That's what his eyes said, even if his mouth didn't. He sat down across from me, leaning back, acting like we were business partners instead of a grandfather and grandson dancing around the edges of a war. "I need you to trust me," he said. "You can't do this stuff anymore, not safely." "I've been doing it for decades." "Yeah," he replied, almost laughing, "but you're older now. Let me be the responsible one." Responsible. That word felt like sandpaper against my nerves. He kept talking, and at some point his words stopped sounding like English. They turned into noise, smooth, practiced, manipulative noise. I heard what he wanted me to hear. "You're weak. You're slipping. You need me. Don't ask questions. Don't look too closely. Don't make this difficult." I nodded through most of it, but inside, something was unraveling. Doubt and anger were grinding against each other. My mind kept flashing back to every decision I'd second-guessed, every moment I'd wondered whether I was imagining things. Was I losing my grip? Was he right? Was I being paranoid? Had I forgotten conversations? Had I given him permission without remembering? These thoughts swarmed me like flies. That was the descent, not the money, not the betrayal. It was the way he made me question my own reality. That same night, I dropped a drinking glass, just slipped right out of my hand, shattered on the linoleum. I stared at the pieces and felt tears burning at the corners of my eyes, tears not from sadness but from humiliation. It wasn't even the first glass I'd dropped that month. I knelt down to pick it up and my knees screamed. I had to brace myself on the counter just to stand again. I looked at my reflection in the dark window above the sink, tired eyes, creased skin, hair thinning at the temples, and I felt ancient. If Tyler had walked in right then, I probably would have believed every lie he'd told me. But he didn't. And in that empty kitchen, surrounded by broken glass, something shifted. Not the loud, sharp kind of shift. Something quieter. A flicker, a spark, a piece of the man I used to be resurfacing through the fog. A voice in my head whispered, "You built houses. You raised children. You survived burying the love of your life. You're not done yet." It wasn't strength, not yet. But it was the beginning of it. The descent didn't end that night. There was more to fall through, more doubt, more confusion, more manipulation. But the ground was getting closer. I could feel it. And somewhere deep inside, behind the exhaustion and fear, the old part of me, the part that didn't take crap from anyone, was starting to wake up. Tyler didn't know it yet. Hell, I barely knew it myself. But the fall was almost over. And the climb back, the slow, painful, deliberate climb, was about to begin. I didn't wake up on September 1st feeling brave. I didn't wake up feeling smart or strategic or ready to take back control. I woke up feeling old. My hip ached from the way I'd slept. My hands felt stiff. And for a few minutes I just sat on the edge of the bed staring at the carpet, wondering how much of the world I'd let slip through my fingers without noticing. But something was different. Not louder, not stronger, just steadier. A kind of stillness inside me. The quiet kind that comes right before a man decides he isn't going to let life, or anyone, push him around anymore. 3 months of being handled, patronized, gaslit, it had worn me thin. But thin or not, I wasn't broken. And that little spark that lit in me the night the glass shattered, it was still there. The gathering didn't start with a big moment. It started with a knock on my door. Around 9:15 that morning, I heard footsteps on the porch, light, quick ones. I figured it might be Tyler again, coming to check on me, which really meant checking how much more control he could tighten. But it wasn't him. It was Mrs. Delgado from next door, holding one of her famous blueberry muffins wrapped in foil. She'd lived there 20 years, knew every crack in the sidewalk, every neighbor by name. And somehow, don't ask me how, she always sensed when something wasn't right. "You look tired, Tom," she said gently. "Everything all right?" I opened my mouth to lie, to brush it off, but the words snagged in my throat. "I'm dealing with something with my grandson," I said instead. She raised an eyebrow. "Tyler, that boy who drives the loud Ford." "That's the one." She stepped closer. "What kind of something?" I didn't mean to tell her. Truly, I didn't. But there was something in her voice, a mixture of warmth and firmness, that loosened my chest. So I told her a little, not the whole truth, just enough that she heard the tremble under my words. She didn't gasp, didn't pity me, just said, "You need help with this." I felt my throat tighten. I don't want to drag anyone into family business. She gave me a look that could cut drywall. "Honey, If your family is hurting you, it's not family business anymore. That woman, standing there on my porch with a muffin in her hand, was the first person to treat me like I wasn't losing my mind. And that was the moment I realized I couldn't win this alone. I thanked her, and after she left, I stood at the window watching her cross the lawn, the foil catching sunlight. It struck me then how long I'd been dealing with this in silence. Silence is a dangerous thing, especially at my age. It can make lies sound like truth. Around noon, I did something I hadn't done in months. I drove. Not far, just to the end of the street and back, but my hands were steady on the wheel, and for the first time in a long while, I felt something like myself again. At afternoon, when Tyler didn't show up, I took it as a blessing. I used the quiet to go through old paperwork, insurance statements, social security letters, bank summaries, tax forms. I stacked everything into neat piles across the dining table. The house smelled faintly of dust and old coffee as I worked, but I felt a strange comfort in the routine. It reminded me of balancing payroll sheets back at Montgomery in the late 80s, double-checking figures while the shop buzzed in the background. At some point, I made a discovery. Not a big one, not yet, but important. While flipping through my check registers, I noticed something subtle, my handwriting versus his, my loops versus his sharp angles, and in places where I never would have misspelled electric, there it was. Electric bill, insurance, maintenance fee. Tyler had written checks in my name. The anger that rose in me wasn't hot, it was cold. I felt my scalp tighten, my jaw clench, but alongside it came a clarity that felt strangely reassuring. I had evidence, real evidence, and I needed more. The second member of my gathering came from pure accident. Late afternoon, just before sundown, I shuffled out to get the mail again, and across the street, working on his motorcycle, was Zach, retired Army, mid-30s, tech whiz, always polite. I'd helped him replace a fence panel a few years back. He stood up, wiped grease off his hands, and called out, "Evening, Mr. Henderson." I don't know why I walked over. Maybe I was tired of being alone with the truth. Maybe something in me was reaching for the kind of strength I used to feel on the job. "You busy?" I asked. "Not at all," he said. "Need something." I hesitated. Then I heard myself say, "I think my grandson is stealing from me." His smile dropped instantly. He took me seriously. No brushing it off, no patronizing, no gentle "are you sure?" He squared his shoulders the way military men do when a situation suddenly matters. "Tell me what's going on." I explained slowly, carefully. The withdrawals, the texts, the passwords changed behind my back. Zach listened without interrupting, nodding every so often, his jaw tightening. When I finished, he said, "Do you have your computer inside?" I blinked, "Yeah." "May I take a look?" I hadn't even considered that. Not really. But every instinct in me trusted him more than I'd trusted myself lately, so I let him inside. Watching him move around my little office corner, the old Dell computer humming, dust on the keyboard, felt like watching someone bail water out of a sinking ship. His fingers flew fast, clicking, typing, opening tabs I didn't recognize. After 10 minutes, he turned to me. "Mr. Henderson, your grandson installed remote access software." My stomach dropped. "English, please." "It means," he said carefully, "he can monitor what you do on your computer. Log in, control things, change passwords, move money." I felt my blood pressure spike. The room seemed to narrow, the chair under me suddenly too small. "He did that," I whispered. "Yes, sir, and there's more." He pointed at the screen. "There's a browser history full of banking pages accessed when you weren't logged in. That means he used this machine. A lot." He paused, meeting my eyes. "And he left a trail." My throat tightened. "A trail?" "Yes, dates, times, IP addresses, enough to show this wasn't you." I stared at the screen. Little blue hyperlinks, time stamps, rows and rows of actions I never made. "Why would he be this sloppy?" I murmured. Zach shrugged. "Some people think older folks don't know enough to catch them. They underestimate you. That's their first mistake." Something hot surged in my chest. Not anger this time, something closer to power. "Can you print that?" I asked. He nodded, absolutely. Pages began spitting from my old printer, slow, noisy, but steady. Each one a piece of the truth. Each one a weight lifted off my chest. When he gathered the stack and handed it to me, something inside me settled. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't confusion. This was theft. This was fraud. This was abuse. And I could prove it. Before he left, Zach rested a hand on my shoulder. "Mr. Henderson, you're not alone in this. I'm right across the street. If you need anything, you call." For the first time in weeks, I felt tears rise, not from fear, from relief. That evening, I sat with the printed pages spread across the coffee table. The house glowed with the warm light from the floor lamp, and a quiet steadiness filled the living room. I could almost feel Linda beside me, hands folded in her lap, her calm presence hovering the way it used to when life got heavy. One last member joined the gathering that night. A voice message. My old friend, Harold from the VFW hall, called out of the blue. "Hey Tom," his graveled voice crackled. "Heard you weren't doing too good. Figured I'd check in. Call me if you need anything, you stubborn old mule." I smiled for the first time in weeks. He didn't know it yet, but I'd be calling him soon. By the time I went to bed, the fear that had been crushing me felt smaller. Still there, but manageable, like a weight I could lift if I positioned my hands right. Because I finally understood something crucial. Tyler wasn't strong because I was weak. He was strong because I was alone. But I wasn't alone anymore. I had neighbors, friends, evidence, a spark inside me I thought I'd lost, and for the first time since all this started, I wasn't falling. I was preparing for the night I'd take everything back. The setup didn't start with some grand plan or cinematic speech. It started with me sitting at the kitchen table the next morning, staring at a half-eaten bowl of oatmeal and a pile of evidence that felt heavier than any toolbox I ever carried in my life. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that lets you hear your heartbeat in your ears, and I kept thinking about something Earl told me back in '89 when a contractor tried to cheat us out of rebar money. "Don't confront a thief without a plan," he'd said. "A cornered rat will bite. A prepared man won't have to." Those words stuck with me. They settled into my bones. Because I wasn't just hurt anymore. I wasn't just afraid or confused or ashamed. I was preparing. And preparation meant patience. The first step was calling Zach. I dialed his number around 10:20 a.m., my hands only shaking a little. He picked up on the second ring. "Mr. Henderson." "Tom," I corrected him in a steadier voice than I felt. I could use a little help again. "Name it." I told him everything. The text Tyler sent someone by mistake, the checks written in my name, the passwords changed, the creeping manipulation. He listened quietly, the way a man listens when he's already forming a plan. When I finished, he said, "You need backups." "Backups?" "Copies of everything, digital and paper, somewhere Tyler can't touch." I took a slow breath. "How do we do that?" "I'll come by tonight. We'll make a secure folder, cloud storage, 2 flash drives and a hard copy. No way he can erase the evidence." Something loosened in my chest. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet, we're just starting." That evening, while the sun dipped low and the house filled with soft orange light, Zach sat at my desk, typing fast. My old printer Word, spitting out fresh pages, transaction logs, browser histories, login attempts. He even showed me how to record audio on my phone. "Just in case," he said. "In case of what?" "In case he tries to deny anything. In case he tries to twist your words. In case he tries to intimidate you." I stared at him. "You think he'd do that?" Zach didn't look away. "Yes." The truth landed like a stone. I'd known it deep down. I'd felt it in every slick smile, every hand on my shoulder, every "don't worry, Grandpa." Tyler wasn't going to back down cleanly. He'd fight to keep what he took. But I was ready to fight too. Zach left around 9, and I sat on the couch with the flash drives in my hand, 2 little pieces of plastic that suddenly felt like lifelines. I tucked one inside my sock drawer under an old flannel shirt Linda had embroidered for me. The other I hid in the garage, inside an empty Folgers can behind the paint cans. Tyler wouldn't find either one. The next morning, I took another step forward. I called Harold. He answered with his usual bark. "You fall in a ditch somewhere, Tom." I almost laughed. "Not yet." "That's reassuring." "I need you," I said, voice low. "Not for a ride, for something else." "What's going on?" I hesitated, then I said it plain. "I think Tyler stole thousands from me. I have proof." Harold's silence wasn't shocked, it was angry. Old man angry, veteran angry. He let out a long exhale. "I'll be there in 15 minutes. He wasn't lying. He showed up in 12, wearing his VFW jacket despite the heat. He walked straight in without knocking and stood in the living room with his hands on his hips, surveying the papers like a sergeant inspecting barracks. "Goddamn kid," he muttered. I knew he was off the last time I saw him, talked too smooth, eyes too shifty. "You never said anything," I said. "Didn't want to disrespect your family, should've." He picked up one of the bank printouts, squinting. "What's the plan here?" That word again, plan. The old me, the crew leader, the problem solver, rose up inside. "I'm gathering proof. Zach helped. I'm making copies, backup copies, hiding them." Harold nodded approvingly. "Good, smart, but you need one more thing." "What's that?" "A witness." "A witness for what?" "For whatever comes next," he said. "If you confront that boy alone, he'll lie, he'll twist things. He might even claim you're confused or unstable, but if someone else is in the room, he can't spin that." I swallowed. "You're saying he'd try to talk his way out of it?" "I'm saying he's already shown you exactly what he is." We talked for nearly an hour. Harold's voice was a rough anchor, grounding me, reminding me I wasn't imagining things. He helped me sort the papers into clear categories: bank fraud, mail tampering, unauthorized access, coercion, manipulation. He handled them with the careful touches of a man who dealt with too many grieving families at the VFW. Before he left, he rested his hand on my shoulder the way Linda used to do when life got too heavy. "You listen to me, Tom," he said quietly. "This isn't your fault, and you're not weak. That boy saw an opening and took it, but you're closing that opening now, and you're not doing it alone." I had to turn away before he saw the emotion in my eyes. When the house grew quiet again, I realized something important. I wasn't scared of Tyler anymore. Not because he wasn't dangerous, not in the emotional sense, but because I finally understood he'd only had power when I was isolated. Now I had documents, copies, witnesses, timing. I had a circle around me, small but strong. The next step came the following day. I rehearsed what I needed to do as I wiped down the kitchen counters, as I folded laundry, as I watched the clock tick past 3. I had to move carefully. Tyler expected me to be quiet, compliant, foggy. The old man who forgot things and didn't argue. So I played the part. At exactly 3:45 p.m. I texted him. "When you get a chance, could you stop by? Need help with a bill." It took him less than a minute to reply. "Be there soon." Of course he would. Money was the bait, and he was hungry. But I wasn't setting a trap in the obvious sense. Not yet. Not the confrontation. That would come later, on the night everything finally broke open. Tonight's mission was smaller, but just as important. Tonight, I needed him to lower his guard. When he showed up, he walked right in, cheerful as ever. "What's up, Grandpa?" he asked, dropping his keys on the counter. I kept my voice soft, tired. "I'm having trouble logging into my email again." He smiled wide. "No problem, I got you." He sat at my desk, fingers flying over the keyboard, completely unaware that every moment he spent accessing my accounts with his own shortcuts was being screen recorded. Zach had installed that earlier, a little program that captured everything for review later. I kept my expression calm, kept my breathing even, kept my hands from shaking. When he wasn't looking, I glanced toward the hallway where Harold stood just out of sight, silent, unseen, listening. A witness. Tyler typed, clicked. navigated through my settings with the kind of confidence only a guilty man has. He muttered to himself, annoyed at some loading screen. And then he said it. Good thing you don't remember any of the passwords. You'd mess everything up. My jaw tightened. Harold heard it too. He didn't reveal himself. Not yet. This wasn't the night of justice. This was the night of gathering the last piece of proof. After 15 minutes, Tyler stood up. All set. You're good to go. I fixed it. Thank you, I said, forcing warmth into my voice. No problem. Just don't mess with things. He left just like that, no suspicion. When the door clicked shut, Harold stepped out from the hallway. He hung himself, he said quietly. You just recorded the rope. We stood in the living room, surrounded by silence and soft lamplight, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Power. Not the kind young men feel. Not adrenaline, not strength in the arms or back. A deeper power. A grounded, steady kind. The kind that comes when a man knows exactly what he's going to do next. Because the truth was simple. I was done gathering. The time for setup was almost over. And the night of justice, the one Tyler never saw coming, was on the horizon. The night of justice didn't come roaring in like thunder. It arrived quiet, soft, almost gentle. September 18th, 9:12 p.m., warm air drifting through the screen door, porch light flickering like it couldn't decide whether to stay on or give out. I sat in my recliner with my hands folded over my stomach, listening to the rhythmic buzz of late summer cicadas outside. My heart wasn't racing, wasn't hammering. It was steady, calm. Like it knew the man I used to be, had climbed all the way back up from the bottom. The plan was simple, but not easy. Tyler needed to believe I was still the same confused, compliant old man he'd been handling for months. He needed to walk through that door with confidence, with swagger, believing the ground was solid beneath him. And then I'd pull it out from under him. I'd spent the last 2 days rehearsing my lines, soft, hesitant, humble, playing the role he expected. Meanwhile, Zach had helped me prepare the most important part, a small digital recorder, smaller than a matchbox, taped under the coffee table where Tyler always dropped his keys. Keep him talking, Zach had said. Let him confess without realizing he's confessing. And if he does, I asked. Zach smiled. He will. Harold was the final piece. He parked his old Chevy 2 blocks away and walked over under cover of evening, slipped in the back door and sat quietly in the kitchen, out of sight but close enough to hear everything. He was my insurance policy, my witness. At 9:27 p.m., headlights washed across the living room window. A familiar engine cut off. The porch boards creaked under a heavy step. Tyler. I didn't move. The door opened without a knock. Hey, Grandpa, he said, his voice dripping with manufactured warmth. Got your message. You said you needed help with something. I looked up slowly, letting my face show a tired relief. Tyler, thank you for coming. I've been having trouble with the bank again. His lips twitched into a little smile. He tried to hide it, but I saw it. He stepped inside, letting the door close behind him. Of course, he said. That's what I'm here for. You know you can depend on me. Depend on me. He said it like he was offering protection, not prison. I gestured weakly toward the coffee table. Could we go over a few things? Some charges I don't understand. He walked right into the trap, sat on the couch, pulled the tray table closer with his foot. Keys clinked onto the table right next to the recorder hidden beneath. Sure, he said, sounding mildly annoyed. But I told you before, Grandpa, you don't need to obsess over the details. That's why I handle all this stuff now. I kept my eyes down, letting the silence hang just long enough. Then I said, I know, but I saw something that scared me. He stiffened, barely noticeable, but I caught it. What scared you? He asked carefully. I picked up the bank summary. My hand shook on purpose. These transfers, to a name I don't recognize. He leaned forward, voice low and soothing. Grandpa, we talked about this, remember? You said I could move the money around. You said you trusted me. I looked him straight in the eye. Did I? He blinked. Just once. Of course you did, he said. You forget things sometimes, it's okay. My jaw tightened, but I made my voice small. Maybe you're right, but this last transfer over $1,000, what was that for? He exhaled sharply. I already told you, bills, groceries, stuff for the house. That much? I asked softly. Things add up, he snapped, then quickly smoothed his tone. Listen, why are you questioning me? After everything I've done, you'd be lost without me. There it was. The control. The ownership. The script he'd perfected. I swallowed slowly. Tyler, did you change my passwords without asking me? He rolled his eyes. Grandpa, please, if I didn't, you'd lock yourself out again. Did I tell you to do it? It doesn't matter. It needed to be done. The recorder caught every word. I let the next question land soft as a feather. Tyler, did you open my mail without asking? He tensed. I told you that's part of me helping. You'd fall behind otherwise. Another confession he didn't recognize as one. Grandson, I whispered, did you take money from me? He didn't blink this time. He smiled. A slow, confident smile. Grandpa, he said with a patronizing chuckle, if I did, it'd be for your benefit. I'm the only one making sure things don't spiral out of control. Everyone else is too busy, or they don't care. You should be grateful I'm stepping up. Grateful. I felt my chest tighten, anger and heartbreak twisting together. I see, I said softly. He seemed relieved at my tone. He leaned back, spread his arms along the couch like he owned the room. You worry too much. I've got everything handled, trust me. I let him relax fully. I needed him confident. I needed him sloppy. Tyler, I said, voice faint, could you explain that last transfer again? The one on August 25th. I just don't understand it. He huffed, annoyed. Grandpa, seriously, we already talked about this. I moved it for safekeeping. You don't keep track of your money well anymore. You said it yourself. My pulse steadied. He was sinking without realizing it. So that transfer, that wasn't something I approved? I asked. He leaned forward. You don't have to approve everything. I know what's best. My throat burned. You didn't think I needed to be told. He scoffed. Told? Grandpa, you're barely keeping up as it is. I can't explain every little thing to you. If I waited for you to understand, nothing would ever get done. A quiet sound came from the kitchen, a chair leg shifting. Harold was listening. I let my next words fall out small, trembling. Son, did you think I wouldn't find out? He froze. Just for a heartbeat. His eyes sharpened, calculating. Something dark flickered behind them. What exactly do you think you found out? He asked carefully. I inhaled slow. Steady. Then I said the words that changed everything. I know about the remote access, the password changes, the transfers. I know you used my computer. I know you've been controlling my accounts behind my back. His face drained of color, then flushed hot. You don't know what you're saying, he stammered. Someone's putting ideas in your head. I shook my head. I saw the logs. You're confused. I have printouts. You don't understand how any of that works. I had help. He stood up fast, knocking the table with his knee. The keys rattled. The recorder picked up the sudden spike in his breathing. Who? He demanded. Who's been filling your head with this crap? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Because right then, the kitchen doorway creaked. Tyler stiffened and turned. Harold stepped out of the shadows. Calm, broad-shouldered, unshakable. Evening, kid, he said. I heard everything. Tyler went pale. What are you doing here? He whispered. Harold crossed his arms, making sure he's not alone while confronting the man who stole his money. Tyler's mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. This is a misunderstanding, he choked out. He's confused, he's old, he forgets things. I stood up slowly. My knees cracked, but my voice didn't. No, I said. I remember everything you just said, and I recorded it. He spun around to me, eyes wide with panic. You what? I tapped the underside of the coffee table. His face collapsed. "No," he whispered. "No, Grandpa, you can't." "I did," I said quietly. "You told me you opened my mail, changed my passwords, moved my money without my consent. You admitted it all." He shook his head violently. Delete it right now." "I won't." He took a step toward me, and Harold took a step toward him, solid as a brick wall. "Don't," Harold warned. Tyler backed up, breath shuddering. You can't do this to me," he said. "I'm family." I felt something inside me break for good. "You should have remembered that before you stole from me," I said. He looked between us, me steady, Harold like a mountain behind me, and I watched the realization hit him like a physical blow. He'd lost. Not his money. Not his access. Not his control. Something worse. He'd lost his power over me. And he knew it. The execution wasn't loud. It wasn't violent. It wasn't chaos. It was clarity. It was truth. And the truth was finally on record. Tyler stumbled back a step. What are you going to do?" I stared at him, feeling the weight of 3 months lift off my chest. "I'm going to report you," I said softly. His knees wobbled. "And I'm going to do it tonight." The strange thing about the hours after a confrontation like that is how still everything feels, like the world holds its breath. After Tyler stormed out, slamming the door so hard the picture frames rattled, the house went quiet in a way I hadn't heard since Linda passed. Harold didn't speak for a long time. He just stood there beside me, arms folded, jaw set tight, making sure I didn't collapse under the weight of what just happened. "You all right?" he finally asked. I nodded, but the truth was complicated. Relief washed over me, yes, but underneath it was something heavier, something bitter, something that felt a lot like grief. "That was your grandson," Harold said softly. "I know," I whispered. "You did the right thing." I didn't answer, because doing the right thing didn't feel good, not the way people expect. It didn't feel righteous or victorious or cleansing. It felt like pouring concrete into a crack you never wanted there in the first place. Necessary but permanent. After Harold left, I sat in the quiet living room, listening to the faint buzz of the porch light outside. The digital recorder lay on the table, still warm from running. I pressed play just long enough to confirm the audio was clear, his voice admitting things he thought he'd buried under months of manipulation. Hearing it felt like pressing on a bruise, painful but oddly validating. By the time I went to bed, it was after 1 a.m. I didn't sleep much. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Tyler's face, shock, anger, fear, then something else at the end. Something like betrayal, but not him betraying me, him feeling betrayed by me. That part stung more than I expected. I woke up around 6:40, long before the sun fully came up. My first thought was simple and hard. Today is the day. I made coffee, sat at the table, and looked over the evidence again. Papers neatly stacked, flash drives glinting in the morning light. My heart pounded slow and heavy, like it was bracing for impact. At 9:15 a.m., I dialed the Montgomery County Adult Protective Services line. A woman answered with a voice so steady it almost broke me. "Adult Protective Services, how may I help you?" "My name is Thomas Henderson," I said, "and I need to report financial abuse." I expected her to question me, to make me prove I wasn't confused or misremembering or exaggerating, but she didn't. Something in my tone must have carried the truth. She asked for details, one at a time, patient but thorough. I told her about the transfers, the mail tampering, the changed passwords, the manipulation, the confrontation. "Do you have documentation?" she asked. "Yes," I said, "a lot." "Good, that will help us tremendously." "Good." It didn't feel good. But I kept going. She said an investigator would contact me within 48 hours, maybe sooner. When I hung up, my hands were trembling, not from fear, but from the weight of what I'd set in motion. There was no turning back now. The moment I made that call, the path ahead shifted permanently for both of us. Around noon, another call came, this time from a number I didn't recognize. "Mr. Henderson," a woman said. This is Officer Marla Stanton with the Dayton Police Department. APS has forwarded your report. I'd like to schedule a visit to go over your evidence." Her voice was calm, businesslike, but not cold. "I can meet today," I said quietly. "I'll be there within the hour," she replied. I hung up and felt my pulse kick up again. This was real now, official, no longer a family matter behind closed doors. The house felt smaller, tighter, like the walls themselves were waiting for what came next. When Officer Stanton arrived, she was younger than I expected, mid-30s maybe, hair in a low bun, uniform neat and crisp. She stepped inside with firm politeness, taking in the room with a single sweep of her eyes. "Is there anyone else in the home currently?" she asked. "No," I said. "All right, let's take this slow, whenever you're ready." We sat at the dining table. She opened a small notebook. I opened the folder of evidence. As I walked her through each page, printouts Zach helped me gather, bank statements, check images with mismatched handwriting, the transcript I'd typed out from the recording. Her expression went from neutral to focused to grim. "Mr. Henderson," she said softly, "this is substantial." I exhaled shakily. I wasn't sure if anyone would believe me. She met my eyes. "I believe you." Something loosened inside me, something tight and painful I'd been carrying for months without fully understanding it. "Can I hear the recording?" she asked. I tapped the phone screen and let it play. Tyler's voice filled the room, casual, confident, arrogant, talking about how I'd mess everything up, how he knew what was best, how he changed my passwords, moved my money, opened my mail. And then his confession that he didn't think I'd ever find out. When the recording ended, Officer Stanton sat very still. "Did he threaten you physically?" she asked. "No," I said, "not that. But he exerted undue influence, psychological pressure, control over your finances." "Yes." She nodded slowly. "This is more than enough to open a criminal case." The words hit me square in the chest. "Criminal case? My grandson. I don't want him to go to jail," I said quietly. "I understand," she replied, "but he committed a crime. Several, actually. Financial exploitation of an elder is taken very seriously in Ohio." I closed my eyes for a moment. "I just want him to stop. I want my life back." "And we'll help you do that," she said. "Whatever comes next, you won't be handling it alone." She walked me through the process, freezing my accounts, creating a fraud report with the bank, filing for financial protection orders if needed. It was overwhelming, but she broke it down step by step until I could breathe again. Before she left, she said, "Mr. Henderson, you did exactly what you should have. Most people in your situation don't come forward. They're scared or ashamed, or they don't think anyone will listen. You were brave." Brave? I didn't feel brave. I felt old and tired and ashamed that I hadn't seen it sooner. As the day went on, calls and emails started rolling in. Bank Fraud Division, APS investigator, the county prosecutor's office. Everyone wanted statements, copies, records. By the time the sun set, my dining table looked like a small war room. Then around 7:45 p.m. my phone buzzed. "Tyler." I let it ring twice before I answered. "Grandpa," his voice was shaky, "can we talk?" "No," I said. He exhaled hard, panicked. "Someone came to my apartment today, asking questions, a detective." "Yes." "You reported me." "Yes." He was breathing fast, ragged. I didn't mean for it to go this far." "You stole from me," I said, voice breaking. "You made me doubt my own mind." "I was helping," he shouted. "You don't understand. I needed the money and you." "I know exactly what you needed," I interrupted, "and what you took." There was a long silence, then a small, hollow whisper. "I'm your grandson." "You were," I said quietly, "before this." The line went dead. I stared at the phone for a long time, a very long time, until the room blurred and I felt something warm on my cheek. I hadn't cried since Linda died. But I cried then. Not for him. For the loss of what he used to be. for the part of myself he took with him, for the realization that justice comes with a cost. The unraveling wasn't his alone. It was mine too. And tomorrow, the world would change again. The thing no one tells you about justice, the real kind, the kind that cuts through your own bloodline, is that it doesn't end with a gavel or a signature or a knock on the door. It ends slowly, quietly over days and weeks, settling into your life like new weather. You learn to live in it, even when it stings. 3 weeks after the investigation began, Officer Stanton called to tell me the county prosecutor was moving forward with charges: financial exploitation of an elder, forgery, theft, unauthorized access to a protected computer, words that sounded heavy, official, permanent. "He'll have his chance to respond," she told me gently. "But your evidence is solid, Mr. Henderson, very solid." I thanked her, though the words felt strange in my mouth. Gratitude mixed with grief. Strength mixed with something that still felt like failure, even though everyone kept telling me I'd done the right thing. 2 days later, my daughter, Tyler's mother, showed up on my porch. Her hair was pulled back tighter than usual, her eyes red like she'd been crying behind the wheel. She looked smaller somehow, shoulders slumped under a weight I recognized all too well. She didn't ask to come inside. She just stepped through the doorway like someone bracing for cold wind. "Dad," she said, her voice cracking, "what happened?" I dreaded that moment. I'd rehearsed what I'd say. But when I saw her standing there, trembling, clutching her handbag like it could hold her upright, every word caught in my throat. I handed her the folder. She didn't even make it to the table. She opened it right there in the living room, standing under the old ceiling fan with late afternoon sun slanting across her face. Page after page, she read, transfers, printouts, copies of checks, the typed transcript of Tyler's confession. Her mouth slowly fell open. "Oh my God," she whispered, "my baby did this." I swallowed hard. "He's not a baby, Corinne." "He was," she said, tears streaming now. "He was my baby, and you, Dad, you trusted him, you loved him. Why would he?" Her voice cracked. I couldn't bring myself to touch her, not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't trust myself not to fall apart with her. "I don't know why," I said softly. "I've run the question in circles, but we can't pretend he didn't do it." She sank onto the couch and covered her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook. I hadn't seen her cry like that since Linda's funeral, and in that moment, the cost of everything hit me all at once. I'd lost money. I'd lost time. I'd lost trust. But she was losing her son. I sat beside her, not too close, just close enough. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I should have seen it, I should have known." "This isn't your fault," I said. "He made choices, bad ones." She nodded, though I could see she didn't believe it yet. We sat in silence for a long time. The clock ticked loud in the quiet, marking each second like it was chiseling something new into the house. Eventually, she wiped her face and stood. "I need to talk to him," she said. "You should," I replied. "But be careful, he'll try to twist things, he's good at that." She nodded again shakily. "I'll call you tomorrow." Then she left. The door closed softly behind her. The house felt bigger than ever. That night I sat on the porch with a blanket over my knees, watching the streetlights flicker on one by one. Kids rode their bikes down the sidewalk. A neighbor walked his dog. Normal life moving on, unaware of what had shifted inside my home. Zach stopped by around 8 with a pizza. He didn't ask questions. He didn't push. He just sat with me, chewing quietly, 2 slices each, watching the quiet street. "You holding up?" he finally asked. "As well as I can." "You did the right thing," he said again. I nodded, though the words weighed different now. Later, Harold called from the VFW, checking on me the way a man checks on a cracked foundation, making sure nothing's shifting beneath the surface. "You're tougher than most," he said. "Don't forget that." "I don't feel tough," I said. "Doesn't matter how you feel. Tough is what you did." I appreciated the words, even if they didn't settle the way he meant them to. The days passed. APS sent updates. The detective followed up with additional questions, Corinne called every evening to check on me. Tyler didn't call at all, not once. The silence between us grew into something wide and permanent. My accounts were secured. New passwords, fraud alerts, extra authentication. I felt safe again, safer than I had in months. But safety comes with a cost too. Every bill I opened, every charge I reviewed, every piece of mail I sorted. I second-guessed myself, double-checked everything, triple-checked some things. Not because I was confused. Because I'd been taught not to trust. And trust, once cracked, doesn't slide back into place overnight. A week later, the prosecutor's office called to explain the next steps. Hearings, restitution, possible charges, possible pleas. I listened, steady as I could, but afterward I sat at the kitchen table staring at my hands. They looked old, thinner than I remembered, but steady. Steady mattered. Before bed, I stood in the hallway and let my fingertips rest on the wooden frame of Linda's picture. Her smile caught the porch light, warm, familiar, strong in the way she always was. "I'm doing the best I can," I whispered to her. "I hope it's enough." The house didn't answer. Houses never do. But something in me settled. Not joy. Not victory. Just a quiet acceptance. The money might come back someday, or it might not. The law would do what it did. Tyler would face his consequences, whatever they turned out to be. Corinne and I would navigate the distance that now lay between us. And me? I would wake up tomorrow, make coffee, open the blinds, and keep going. Because that's what men my age do. We keep going. Even when it hurts. Even when our hearts are cracked. Even when the people we loved have taken more than we thought we could lose. I didn't get a happy ending. But I got truth. And truth, however bitter, was better than the darkness I'd been living in. Better than confusion. Better than silence. Better than pretending. On the first crisp morning of October, I stepped onto my porch with a cup of coffee, breathed in the cool air, and realized something simple, something steady. I had my life back. Not whole, not untouched, not unscarred. But mine. And after everything that happened, that was enough.